if you don't like the fact that I get off of a phone call with you and I send you a selfie video text message, if that's too progressive for you, that's too much for you, it's too unprofessional for you, then good. I don't want to do business with you anyway, because you're going to cause me a bunch of problems later on when I start doing those things anyway.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I loved your video the other day you had with your meme follow-ups. I really enjoy that. And
yeah.
It's an awesome way to be creative and market when everyone else is boring as shit.
And when people don't, and I have had people get back to me and they're like, dude, this is ridiculous and unprofessional. Right. And I'm like, fine. I just hit the delete button on your lead. I don't like you either way.
Right. So let me ask you a question. If you're totally okay with someone saying no and you guys not doing a deal, at what point do you stop the follow-up?
Really good question. I wouldn't say that I ever stop, and I wouldn't recommend that anybody actually does stop following up. But I do think that there are definitely times in the sales process with people to kind of take your foot off the gas for a month or 2 or 6 months even. There's definitely a time when you should pause. And I think that's when you have done maybe everything that you kind of know how to do from a value-driven standpoint or an entertainment standpoint. I think most people either don't follow up or stop following up way too early because they get tired of, hey, Ed, it's me. I'm just checking in. I'm just following up, just checking in, just following up. Sooner or later, I'm going to feel bad about reaching out to you, leaving you a 15th voicemail saying, hey, I'm just following up. We know you're following up. So I feel bad about that and I stop following up. But if I'm able to send out those memes or the videos or, whatever, I'll always have a reason to follow up with somebody. And so if I am trying to have fun with somebody, if I am trying to provide them with value, if I am doing those things effectively and somebody still, is just a jerk to me, or I can tell that they're getting upset that I'm still kind of in their space, that's where I'll let off the gas for a little while. But I don't think anybody should ever stop following up as long as you're able to figure out a way to provide somebody with some value, some entertainment, a laugh, whatever.
I got one for you in terms of qualifying and closing. If someone doesn't close, if you're at 40 or 50% close rate and someone doesn't close, what are you typically thinking or seeing as the reason they didn't close? And is that your fault for not qualifying earlier in the conversation, that it squeezed out the back? Give me some context around that, because if you're qualifying hard enough, then they shouldn't be leaving because of XYZ reason. Give me a little context around that. Does that even make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So really often salespeople and business professionals aren't going to get a deal closed. Obviously, none of us are the 100% closer club, but I think more often than not, people spend time on the objections that they hear, not the ones that they don't hear. And I'll explain. Most people think that they're not getting a contract back or a deal done because their pricing wasn't competitive enough, or somebody had a better price. They think that maybe if we had a shorter contract, somebody would do something with us. They think maybe if they truly do get to talk to their vice president or whatever, that they could then get a deal. Because those are usually the things that are explained over the phone or in person during a sales process. The problem is that while most salespeople are reacting to those types of conversations or objections, what they should be focusing on are the unspoken objections and the real reasons why people may not be pulling the trigger. I'll give you an example. I was selling a deal to a person that was in Texas. They had a big accounting firm that I was selling a contract to. And he told me on the phone, I need to talk to my VP. He's been in this business way longer than I have. I'm actually the original owner's son, kind of now taking the taking control of the company or whatever. And so I want to get his feedback on this before I actually sign this deal. And so I understood that that's a very valid point. He probably does want some feedback from somebody that is in his business. So I decided to play along, and I told him that, when it comes time for me to make decisions too, If I do have the opportunity to talk to my VP or somebody that's more experienced, I love to get their feedback, and obviously wouldn't really end up doing anything that, they told me or advised me not to do. And so I just asked, and I said, after you speak with that specific owner or whatever, or the VP, and they say no, what would happen? He said, I'd probably, maybe do this. And I said, let me tell you what, I guarantee that you don't have to talk to your VP. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I said, you're not thinking about talking to somebody else. What you're doing is you're thinking about this decision with me and comparing it to all the other bad decisions that you've made in the past, not the good ones, or else you would have already signed this. So I asked him, you have kids? Yeah, man, I got 2 kids. All right, cool. You're in Texas. I'm assuming you probably have a swimming pool, right? Yeah, man, we just bought one. We just installed one in our backyard last year. I was like, let me guess, man, 30, 40, 50 grand? How much did you spend? He's like, yeah, it was about 40 grand. I said, let me ask you a question. How often do your kids actually use that pool? He's like, man, pretty much never. And I'm like, dude, that's what you're thinking about with my deal, is you're thinking about the fact that your employees might not use this every day and that it's just going to be another swimming pool sitting around, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And that is where I started getting some headway in the conversation. And you're able to joke around about the other things, the bikes in the garage, the MacBook Pro he bought his daughter that never uses it, blah, blah, blah. And you're able to help somebody else come to the conclusion that they don't buy a swimming pool, bikes, or a MacBook Pro to use every single day. Just because they're not used every single day doesn't make them a bad investment. It feels like one because they're not being used. But at the end of the day, would you rather, when you want a swimming pool, would you rather have to go to a friend's house, or would you rather use the one in your backyard because you have it? Right. And so once we were able to have that discussion on that unspoken objection, he did a deal with me right then and there and signed the contract without having to speak with anybody, because I helped him make the neurological association with some of those items that he paid for and aren't being used every single day, but he's happy are there because when they actually are used, they're used when they need to be or want to be. So I think that most people are wrong in figuring out why people aren't doing business with them. And it usually doesn't have to do with the price or the term or some of these things that are kind of spoken right off the bat. Most people just aren't that honest. Yeah. Most people are pretty dishonest. They aren't telling you that main reason why they're not making a purchase. I have an old friend of mine that's very successful, but he's in a tiny little town. Like there's like 1,000 people in this town, and most people aren't very wealthy there. He is. And he can more than afford a Lamborghini. And he told me the reason he hasn't bought this Lamborghini is because he would be really self-conscious about how other people would think or see him driving around in a $400,000 sports car. And that's the reason why he hasn't purchased it yet. And so he would never tell that to the dealership. So the salesperson thinks, maybe I got to give him a discount or, whatever. When really at the end of the day, the potential buyer here in this instance is thinking about their self-image and being conscious about, being the rich guy around town. So that's a pretty elaborate explanation there, but hopefully that helps kind of get my point across.
Yeah, I appreciate the insight. How often is it that versus they just don't have money and don't want to say it, or they might be looking at a competitor? When you go through the potential objections to a close, what are you seeing is it their own past fuck ups that are screwing the deal, or is it budget constraints? Is it other vendors? Is it internal strife within the company? What else are you seeing, and what's most common that you're working through?
So those are all viable reasons why people may not do business with you. Sometimes people are just looking for the best price. So you got to kind of figure out a little bit how much of a commodity your product or your service is. If it, insurance, I'm going to get the same insurance from somebody and coverage, my premium is going to be different. So I am looking for the cheapest, health or life insurance, whatever, because it's a total commodity. Same with gas prices. But as far as most of the products that I've sold, I don't think that price is the main reason. Obviously, of course, there are people that can either afford my products and there's people that can't. I wouldn't expect people that can't, purchase or afford my products to actually do business with me. That's a very viable reason why somebody wouldn't buy. At the exact same time, there's ways around that and getting, to the bottom of that. I like giving the price of my products first thing on the phone call, because you could automatically have sticker shock and be like, dude, what? This is $1,000 a month thing?
You're like the third person recently that I've interviewed that has said that. And I so much more, and that's how I roll as well. I appreciate it. Gets it out of the way early, so there's not this drawn out thing. You get to the price and it's so far off the table that it's not like, why did you just waste the hour?